Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the WaterBridge Fast Forward AMA. We have Anjali Sosale, your partner at WaterBridge Ventures, who shall be hosting the session. We'll be kickstarting the session within 2 minutes. So we are waiting for all the attendees to join in. This is the agenda per se for the webinar. We'll be starting sharp at 5:05, and then there will be an introductory session on the Fast Forward program, followed by a Q&A session. Since the idea of the webinar is to address founder queries about the Fast Forward program, we would like to request all the attendees to refrain from asking questions about their individual application. In case of any specific queries you have relating to the application, we request you to write to us at fastforward@waterbridge.vc. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Anjali, and I'm hosting today's AMA session for Fast Forward 2023. Thank you so much for taking a time out this Tuesday evening and joining us for this live webinar. I hope all of you can see the screen and the agenda ahead of you. Ideally, I'll spend the first few minutes taking you through the core tenets of the program. I'm also going to attempt to answer some frequently asked questions about the program, who should apply, why we should apply. And I'll wrap up quickly with what the portfolio has been like currently for Fast Forward and how do we add value beyond just capital or investment. Before I start, I'd like to quickly introduce the entire Fast Forward team. Together with me sitting in the Bangalore office in our conference room is Nihar Mehta. I also have Fez, who works out of Bombay. I have Kaustav and Raghav as well. Each and every one of your applications, as you know, is actually answered and perused through a real human at WaterBridge. And I thought it would be good for each of you to meet the entire Fast Forward team today. Thank you once again. And with that, we're all set to start today's AMA session. What is Fast Forward? Fast Forward has become today an industry-leading marquee seed investment program. Fast Forward simply means getting straight equity investment of up to $1 million in the hands of the most deserving founders as quickly as possible. This is designed to be a straight equity investment, and hence we don't prefer to do converts and saves. And Fast Forward is part of our main fund or our main investment program at WaterBridge. It isn't a side allocation and it isn't an accelerator program. And therefore, what that means is that one of our three partners at WaterBridge will be on the board and will lead the Fast Forward investment, and that each of you will be treated on par with the rest of our portfolio. And that means not just the first $1 million check, but also on par eligibility to receive follow-on funding. Typically, the investment strategy at WaterBridge is to come in as early as possible. And therefore, with Fast Forward, we also seek to do idea stage companies. So you could just quit your job, have a broad idea and a PPT of where and what you'd like to start, and we'd be happy to fund those investments. In fact, in 2020, LOLO, one of our most scaled Fast Forward companies, was a team that had just quit Flipkart and had an idea. Follow-on investment at WaterBridge is typically up to 3 additional rounds. So beyond the first $1 million check, I would encourage founders to look at Fast Forward as a program where we'd invest up until Series C at least. The second key thing about Fast Forward is that it's designed to be a fully digital online application process. The origin of Fast Forward was back in 2020 at the peak of the first national lockdown. And that meant it was not just applications, but end-to-end evaluations. Pitches were all done via video calls, and including the documentation was all done back and forth on emails. So yes, we have done deals end-to-end purely digitally. However, given that we're now back physically in office, this year's Fast Forward would be more hybrid, I would say. But the core parts of the evaluation, that is the initial application, as well as the first video pitch with the investment team, is still very much designed to be an entirely remote and digital first program. Typically, the process is you answer about 35 to 40 questions via an online form. Several of these questions are mandatory. Some of them are optional, but we always encourage founders to fill out the entire application form. And if it's a yes, typically we directly invite you to do a live pitch or a Zoom pitch with an investment team member at WaterBridge. So it is designed to be a fairly fast response. All applications will get a yes or no response. If it's a yes, as I mentioned, it's directly heads to a video pitch. If it's a no, we seek to give you specific feedback on the reasons for rejection. They mostly would be either doesn't fit a sector of our choice, maybe it's already too scaled and doesn't truly fit an early stage, idea stage, seed stage investment, or it could be a portfolio conflict. I'll spend a little time later on the top reasons why we reject the investments. But simply put, as a key and core tenant, FastForward is designed to be a pure online application process, and 100% of applications get a yes or no feedback. I spoke about how each of our partners will lead this investment and how FastForward remains a core value prop of WaterBridge overall. The fourth point here is that a single application enables you to pitch to up to 10 preferred VC partners. FastForward is also designed to be an industry-leading program where we bring together different stakeholders in the ecosystem. For us, core co-investment partners would mean other VC funds that could add value to your cap table above and beyond what WaterBridge does. You'd see from the 10 logos that we have selected that these are highly curated. These logos, in fact, change every year based on what we feel are the key investment trends of the season or of the year. And each of our co-investment partners are either industry specialists or GTM specialists or bring like a core value prop beyond WaterBridge. It's up entirely to your founder. As a founder, it's up to your choice entirely on whether you would like us to share your application with our investment partners or not. And if you prefer that we recommend that you mention that on your application form. Finally, beyond investment partners, we have also tied up with multiple cloud and SaaS and business partners. These partners give us investment credits of up to $500,000. And this is over and above and beyond the $1 million in pure cash investment that WaterBridge offers. These are typically designed to be across cloud services, SaaS, and business services. We believe that this is a key set of perks, credits, and discounts that any idea stage or early stage company, especially those that are internet and digital native, would require for their early scale and success. FastForward FAQs. Literally, we just have 4 illustrative FAQs put up on the slide here, and we encourage you to head to our website in order to see the full list of FAQs. This AMA, of course, is also designed to answer any specific FAQs that you have, and hence the live format today. Today's AMA is just the first, and our intent is to do one AMA every month for the next 2 months at least, and through the course of the program. So if any of you miss out asking questions or have new ones after our AMA, feel free to write in to us, head to our website, or just apply and show up in any one of the subsequent AMA programs. Who should apply? FastForward is designed to be early stage. At WaterBridge, we always like being the first institutional VC on a founder's cap table, and hence, therefore, I would encourage founders who haven't previously raised VC capital to apply, or folks that have raised typically from non-institutions. Non-institutions would mean angels, friends, family, could also be slightly more organized angel networks. But ideally, if you haven't raised institutional VC before, you are the ideal candidate for FastForward. In terms of business size and scale, with FastForward, we do pre-revenue, we do pre-product, we even do idea stage. So don't hold back if you haven't earned your first revenue dollars, you haven't won your first enterprise client. We are pretty much stage agnostic. Could be idea stage, could be pre-product, could be pre-revenue, but that would not bias us in terms of whether we'd like to invest in FastForward or not. The second question is this an incubator or accelerator program? Definitely not is the answer. I covered this briefly in the introduction. This is a faster and easier way to get pure equity capital into your business. We don't follow cohorts at FastForward. We don't limit the number of companies that we like to invest and back in as part of FastForward. And we treat all FastForward founders on par with the rest of the portfolio. So this isn't designed to be anything other than equity. So it's not a grant. It's not designed to be milestone-based or tranche-based. And it's definitely not venture debt. It's a straightforward equity program that follows a rolling application process, and then it's not bound by a certain capital allocation or a designated cohort size. How many companies get selected for FastForward? We're actually proud that FastForward today is in its 4th edition. FastForward originated in 2020, and in our very first year, we did 5 investments. Several of those investments have gone on to scale and raise all the way from pre-Series A to Series B. Each of these companies, and it's not a coincidence that we have 5 out of 8 FastForward companies that have raised follow-on funding. So it couldn't be a coincidence that we don't give you enough value add, or we don't spend sufficient time with our early stage FastForward companies. Everybody is treated with the same amount of time that we do our $2-3 million checks as well. We don't therefore have a minimum number. We just go by the founders and the business models that we like the most. We just did 1 investment, for example, last year in a company called Pawan. But as I said, it could range from 1 a year to 5 a year, but we typically do not like to bind ourselves by the count of deals that we do every year. We look at FastForward at the fund level, and therefore, given that we are currently investing from our second fund, we aim to do anywhere from 10 to 15 seed stage, idea stage companies out of this fund. And hence, even this year at FastForward, we could do 1, we could do none, or we could do 5. Does raising from WaterBridge mean I can't apply to other accelerators in similar programs? We often get this question from founders in terms of how do my chances of applying for other accelerator programs or other seed stage programs get impacted if I apply to FastForward. We, for one, have not designed FastForward to be an exclusive program in any way. So you could apply to FastForward, you could be part of FastForward, and most definitely apply to other programs. In fact, we do have examples from our portfolio where they're part of FastForward and they've subsequently gone on to raise capital from other accelerator programs, for example, like Sequoia's Surge program, like the Accel Atoms program. So nothing really binds you exclusively and purely to WaterBridge. And even during the application process, several founders do mention that they've applied to other programs. We don't positively or negatively, for that matter, change the way in which we evaluate a company based on where you've applied, where else you've applied. And having said that, even having WaterBridge on the cap table, I strongly believe will only improve your chances of getting into some of these other programs. The simple answer to this question is no, raising money from WaterBridge does not prohibit or restrict you from applying or being part of other programs. We do have a long application process in terms of a long application form. Sorry, we have a short application process, but a long application form. The reason for this is we'd like only for high intent founders to apply for our seed program. We really mean that if you're an idea stage company, that you're serious about starting up and scaling up, and therefore you'd see about 35 to 40 questions, several of which are mandatory. Many of us have asked us for tips and tricks and what do we mean by some of the questions that we've posed in the application form. Don't worry, there is an all-encompassing question right at the very end, which allows you to share with us any documents that you feel any of the questions that we have posed from our side have not already captured. So I would really encourage founders to not stress about the specific questions, but to use that question at the very end to share with us anything that they believe would make the application case stronger. Of course, it's a no-brainer to say that definitely fill out the application in entirety and not just the mandatory questions. Optional information always makes it easier for us to evaluate your business deeper. For example, we do have a video pitch where we encourage founders to give us a quick elevator pitch, maybe to even introduce themselves briefly and why they are best suited in order to be building and solving for this problem statement. For us, that enables us to see who the humans behind the application are, enables us to hear the story directly from you, and also gives us a sneak peek in the way in which you describe your business, in the way in which you communicate your value prop and your differentiation. So although it's optional, we would really recommend that you take a minute to fill out the video pitch. We also have a question on the typical business metrics that you are currently seeing or tracking for your business. Of course, if you're an idea stage or a pre-product company, this is not applicable for you. And we do see this as a common pitfall in the sense that founders typically say, I'm an idea stage, early stage company, and therefore business metrics is not applicable for me. I feel a more nuanced way to answer that question would really be to think through that tomorrow, if you're live and you have your first few customers, what would be the ideal metrics that you would really like to start tracking for your business? So it always helps us understand how are you seeing this ahead and in the future. And typically, what are the North Star metrics that you'd like to start appearing on your MIS whenever that time that you start building out your revenue or earning your customers. MIS and other traction, we always love to see how founders have built out their early MISs for the same reasons I mentioned before, which is what metrics are important for you. As a founder, what metrics do you track on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? And also, what is the current traction of those metrics? Of course, absolute numbers would be low given these are designed to be early stage applications, but it's important for us to see what growth rates have been. How has your MIS evolved over the last few weeks or months that you've been building out this business? And more importantly, are you benchmarking that to peers and to competition? All these metrics are typically captured in a silo. In terms of other pitfalls to avoid while filling out FastForward, we do have a sector and subsector dropdown called Others. Of course, a lot of you do choose Others and choose to not force fit your sector into one of the predefined criteria already as part of the form. We've always asked you to please define Others. So it's not ideal that your sectors are not from the laundry list of dropdowns already made available as part of the application. But for whatever reason, if you choose to put Others, we sincerely request that you explain why you believe it doesn't fit into any of the other evaluation criteria. For us, this is again just a way of us knowing whether you take the trouble to fit your business into a predefined criteria, or you take the easy way out. I don't want to scroll through 17, 18 drop downs. I'll just hit Others. We encourage you to go through the list and try and fit yourself into one of those. But for whatever reason, if we have missed that subsector, hit Others, but definitely tell us what Others mean. The other thing that we put out very publicly is that we typically avoid taking investment risks or investment bets that directly or indirectly conflict with our existing portfolio. While we may not do bets that conflict with our seed stage portfolio, we really expect that founders explain to us how and why their business models are different from WaterBridge's existing portfolio. I think that's really important. We could take portfolio bets that are broadly in the similar space as some of our scaled portfolio. If we are able to understand from your application, or you're able to describe to us during the video pitch as to what the future vision and mission of your business is and why you see that there is no direct conflict, or why you see the mission being significantly different from an existing WaterBridge portfolio. Ideally, we avoid direct conflicts, but if something is broadly in the same range, for example, if you're building another alt e-commerce marketplace, we'd be open to looking at it from an investment perspective, but only if you're convinced, as I said, that there is no direct conflict. But the onus of proving or convincing that there's no direct conflict really lies on you as a founder via your application, or if we invite you for the video pitch, I would encourage you to ask one of us that question directly in the first 5 minutes and take the trouble of explaining why you see the broad visions being different. We've also shared, in fact, an application walkthrough that Faiz and Nilesh from our team previously recorded. We're going to put up the links in the chat box today. And in fact, I request Nihar to do that right now. And we'd encourage you to head there. We have a detailed application, tips and tricks, and a walkthrough as well. As always, head to the full list of FAQs as well as our LinkedIn page in order to get frequent updates on how we are tracking with regard to applications. We could move to the next slide. In terms of timelines, when we say fast forward, we weren't kidding. Our idea is to give every application a response in a 7-day time frame. Also, for us to take a decision in the next 7 days, typically from the time that you're invited to a video pitch to the time that we get back is hopefully not more than a week or 7 business days. That would either mean a second call or a second call directly with the partnership, or we get back passing the application. Either which way, in 7 days, you'll get yes or no. In 14 days, you'll know whether you're pitching to a partner or not. And by the 3rd week, you'd know whether we'd be interested in issuing you a term sheet or not. How do we decide so quickly? I think this is really secret sauce. For us, it's very simple. We are heavily outbound focused, high conviction, thesis driven investors. We prefer to invest only in these 6 sector boxes that you see on your screens. At one point, these sectors could seem like we invest in everything, but a more nuanced look would encourage you to see that there are definite patterns that we have our investment preferences for. Education, health, global SaaS, consumer tech, fintech, and tech for SMEs are our 6 sector preferences. And these are the ones that we typically like you to be a part of or belong to. Overall, in terms of how we like to decide so quickly, I always say that the magic happens when 3 things fall in place. One is, of course, it is a sector of our choice and there's no direct conflict with an existing portfolio company. But is it a founder with a very, very strong founder market fit? For us, we put founders ahead of these sector boxes or founders ahead of markets. We also look for founders who come from the spaces that they're building for. And that's what we mean by founder market fit. Have you previously solved for this problem, either as an employee in a company, or have you worked in this space previously? Have you maybe tried another startup that tried to solve the same problem, but maybe differently via different GTM, different founding team, different business model? But we actually look for founders who come from deep domain knowledge and expertise, and founder market fit for us is always ahead of these sectors. The second piece is, of course, the business model. And then finally, I would say the market. When I say markets, I specifically mean these sectors, but beyond that, what are really the macro inflection points, as well as the micro tailwinds that make you believe the time is now? Throughout the application, all our questions around market sizing are all helping us get indicators towards A, how deep these markets are, B, why do you believe the time is now, and C, as a founding team, why are you best positioned to win in this market? I think through different means, we try to get answers to these questions. But basically, if you're a founder that comes from a particular space or that is very close to a problem statement, you might be solving for a particular problem statement because you've experienced it before yourself, and therefore you feel you bring a very differentiated lens to the business model or the problem statement. But why do you believe your time is now? What are, say, regulatory tailwinds? What are the overall, competitive landscape? How has that changed recently for you to believe now is the right time? But it could be competition, it could be regulation, it could just be you as a founding team believe that you're privy to certain knowledge, very, very deep expertise, IP, patents, copyrights that set you apart. But it's important for us to know, why do you believe the time is now? Important for us to know what is your unfair advantage, and also important for us to know how deep these markets are. When I say how deep these markets are, what's your GTM? Is it B2B? Is it B2C? What geos are you chasing? Is this a made for India, or is it a made from India? Are you chasing India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, EMEA, global, US? We expect that you have thought through some of these geos at the time of the application. And again, you can answer the question as to, for example, a lot of founders, especially those who are building SaaS products, come and tell us that North America or Southeast Asia is a key go-to-market for them. And the immediate next question we ask is, who in the founding team is experienced with selling to these markets? Have you identified who your potential hires could be for sales in these markets? So these are some of the questions that we frequently ask founders in terms of, if you're selling outside India, what gives you the advantage to be able to sell differently? Is it product-led sales? Is it founder-led outbound? Are you going to start with enterprises first? Are you going to start with mid-market? Or are you going to start with the long tail, do a DIY self-serve model, and then work your way up? But some of these questions get posed via the application. Many of these will get posed during your video pitch. But our expectation is that you've thought through these questions as a founder if you're applying for FastForward. I'll give Nihar a minute to post some of the blurbs on the chat box. We have written extensive blogs on how we decide so quickly that give you some additional tips and tricks here. So I'll allow Nihar to just post these on the chat box. In the meanwhile, if any of you have any questions, we'd encourage you to put it in the Q&A box. I have about 2-3 more slides to go, and then I'll accumulate all the questions and answer them together at the very end. But feel free to keep typing away. I see a few questions have already built up, but would really encourage you to keep putting in your questions here. And we have reserved the last 15 to 20 minutes to answer some of these questions. Another thing that we're very proud about at WaterBridge is how and why are we different from every other fund? And we all say that, is the color of money all the same? And what is the value that we bring beyond investment and beyond capital? I think our value add approach is best defined as the 5 C's. I'll start with community. We all know that you can't build companies alone, and it takes a village to really be able to scale a startup, especially given we're talking idea stage and very, very early stage startups here. At WaterBridge, we've been part of the early stage community as WaterBridge for 6 years. But beyond that, the partnership brings collectively more than 60 years of experience overall in different parts of the ecosystem. And therefore, we bring in extremely deep, just not India networks, but global networks as well. And that takes me to cross-border, which is another stronghold of what WaterBridge brings to the table. We bring both global as well as Indian networks to the cap table. This could be helping you identify your top talent, helping you find your first customer, your first employee, your first vendor, your first GTM partner, helping you build out your advisory board. And so therefore, for us, community is not just building the right founder peer group and community yourself, which I'm sure as founders, you will be better positioned to do for yourselves. But beyond a founder community, we actively work with you to build what I'd like to define as a 360 community, which is not just talent and employees, but customers, vendors, partners, board, mentor, etc. Moving on to compliance, we are an institutional VC, and you'd see from just the way we approach, whether it's this AMA, whether it's our application form, whether it's even replying to you on feedback, we are a homegrown, professionally run and operated VC, and that's how we treat every founder that comes as part of the WaterBridge family, and that's how we welcome every portfolio into the WaterBridge family. We have extremely high corporate governance standards. Corporate governance in early stage, of course, has been making headlines for all the wrong reasons in the last couple of years. But as an institutional VC backed by institutional LPs, we have a very high bar for compliance. What that means is right from the minute we give you a term sheet, you see that we work with external law firms, we work with external Big Four auditors, we work with external company secretary firms, with external tax and legal DD firms. But we will surround you with highly competent professional advisors, and we will ensure that at every step of the way, it's not just about signing the SHA and doing the deal-related documentation, but beyond that, we would work with you for rigorous financial reporting, rigorous tax, legal, and company secretarial reporting, as well as later on as you scale up and seek additional capital with best-in-class pitch books as well. Competency is something, again, that we believe in strongly at WaterBridge. You would have seen from our 6 sector boxes that we already publicly state our sector preferences. But beyond that, every investment professional at WaterBridge is encouraged to pick up 1 or 2 sectors and to go deeply into those sectors. So when we say competency, a simple question we ask ourselves is, if we don't understand the space that founders are building in, it's a pass. Another way is, if we can't bring in serious value add to that particular founder in connecting you to, say, industry experts in a given domain, then we typically pass. That could not just mean a follow-on set of, say, sector-specific investors. It could even mean people from research and academia. It could mean people who could be very highly competent, independent board advisors. It could be people who could help you with IP, with brand building and marketing. And of course, people who could help you with core product and tech as well. Cap table, we are a highly collaborative VC firm. I mentioned early on that FastForward is designed as a program where a single application enables you to seamlessly pitch to up to 10 VCs. We actually share this application at the back end with the VCs, if of course you give us consent, so that we can do outbound and that these VCs can reach out to you. It's designed not just to save time for founders and to make the entire pitch process efficient, but even in terms of follow-on capital. I think a good way to judge WaterBridge or to just see the quality of WaterBridge portfolio is to head to the portfolio section of our website and to look at the company that we keep as follow-on investors and as co-investors at WaterBridge. You'll see the world's largest VC funds, all part of WaterBridge portfolio cap tables. You'll see India's best VCs as part of WaterBridge portfolio cap tables. And you'll not just see VCs, but you'll see marquee global corporate VCs and global corporates also as part of our cap tables. So we take a lot of pride in the diversity and the quality of investment that our portfolio has attracted. And this is a key part of our value add. Given that we are your first institutional VC partner, we do take a lot of time and energy in curating your cap table and helping you fine-tune your pitch, and therefore set you up for best follow-on investment success. I spoke briefly about cross-border earlier, so don't want to spend too much additional time on it, but this is especially relevant to B2B companies looking at beyond India as their customer base and beyond India for their GTMs. We connect you with GTM specialists across Europe, Southeast Asia, the US. We help you in recruiting some of the best sales talent in order for you to deepen your networks and just expand your top of funnel revenue pipelines. Just doing a time check here. I think I'll spend 4 more minutes and then straight away start attacking those questions. For this edition of Fast Forward, we're super proud to be partnering with these 10 VCs. My colleague Faiz, who's in the call here today, has done all the hard work in stitching together these partnerships. He's here and happy to answer specific questions that any of you may have. Each of these VCs, like I said, have typically changed with every Fast Forward edition that we've had. In our 4th edition, these are the logos that we've collaborated with. Each of these networks actually bring sector-specific expertise. ATEX, for example, is a deep tech-focused fund. Spiral, in fact, is Japanese capital. Enzia, again, focuses on 3 broad sectors like tech, healthcare, climate. We have Arali, that's a B2B-focused fund. And for us, these logos are not just slapping several logos to call them all our partners, but we have actually made co-investments with several of these companies. We share Downtown with Waveform. We have Curious Junior with Enzia. We have Yellow Metal with Java. With Eximius, we have Bima Kavach. So we really take pride in the fact that it's not just about putting these logos as partners, but these are partners who have actually co-invested with us before the proof is really in the pudding. I mentioned up to $500,000 of credits from a host of cloud SaaS and business partners. You'd see that we have the best of the best logos here from Google, AWS, and Microsoft on the cloud side, to Salesforce, AppFlyer, Segment, Notion. On the SaaS side, we have some offline partnerships as well with folks at WeWork. We have insurance partnerships. Bima Kavach, in fact, is a WaterBridge portfolio, and they are willing to give all companies and take care of each company's business insurance needs. But across the board, we've taken the trouble to think through typically where your early SaaS spends would be, where your early internal tech stack would be, whether it's putting together a bunch of creatives on Canva or seeking business insurance on Bima Kavach or sharing pitch docs, say via Docs and Dropbox, or even having a digital cap table via Trika. We've tried to think through the tech stack that way and done outbound and brought almost more than 30 logos that you'll see here in terms of partnerships. In terms of value, these are $500,000, so this is not anything trivial, and we believe this is a significant value add for Fast Forward as well. Finally, these are an indicative list of the deals that we have done as part of Fast Forward. Several of these companies, including Zet, that was previously OneCode, and LOLO today, are market-leading apps in the country. LOLO, that number is in fact dated. It's actually 20 million plus downloads, and it's a top app in the country today. Several of these companies, as mentioned earlier, have raised follow-on funding, and we are very proud to say that we have participated in each of those follow-on rounds. So with regard to BidClass, LOLO, Zet, Yellow Metal, and Fairside Stories, all these companies have raised subsequent rounds of funding, and WaterBridge has participated in each and every one of those follow-on rounds. With that, I put an end to the presentation. Yeah, if you could take the presentation off so folks could see us. Yeah. And also, could you just pin this video, please? Spotlight for everyone. Great. I think we'd head to the Q&A now, and I'm just going to start quickly running through the questions and answering as much as we can. I'm happy to take a question on how early is early. And do we really need to incorporate a company before we apply? And is it okay if we're just at the stage prior to incorporation? I think definitely yes. I don't think incorporation is a must. I know we have asked specifically for a full legal name, and we've actually specifically said that only if it's a private limited company, apply to fast forward. But you could put out the name of the company and specifically mention that while you haven't done the incorporation, that you are applying as an idea stage company. So answer to that would be yes. I think there's also a question on previously funding at seed stage, and Nihal, let me know if you want to moderate some of these, given that you're receiving questions via multiple channels, including our LinkedIn. I think the question on prior funding, as I mentioned, WaterBridge's preference is to be the first institutional VC on your cap table. If you're raised previously from VC, I wouldn't discourage you from applying, but I would just say that FastForward is designed for early stage, and WaterBridge as an investor, we only do lead checks, meaning for our 1 million, we expect definitely a significant double-digit equity ownership in these companies. If you still believe that from your cap table construct, it works for you, I would encourage you to apply. Otherwise, it really depends on you on how much you intend to dilute. And so the question is up to you. But I would say that you have a stronger chance if you're not previously institutional VC backed. If you've previously raised money from angels, it could even be, like a Y Combinator style accelerator program. You could be part of corporate accelerator programs. You could have raised like friends and family round. All of that doesn't really count as pure institutional VC. All of that should be fine. And if that's what you mean by seed, and then applying to fast forward works perfectly well. As I said, our preference is to be the first institutional VC check. Our preference is to lead, and our preference is to be the largest institutional VC in terms of shareholding on your cap table.
So Anjali, one of the questions that has come is basically asking what are the investment terms relating to the Fast Forward program? So if you can just highlight that.
Yeah, I think I just covered our investment terms, Nihar, in terms of the fact that we always lead and that we'd always like to pick up definitely double-digit equity ownership in the program.
Anjali, one question that has often come up is that what about the company if it is incorporated outside India? How does that relate per se to the Fast Forward program?
Yeah, I think that's a great question that you've asked, Nihar. We do specifically only invite India domiciled companies to invest in Fast Forward. This is not because the reason that we don't invest in foreign headquartered companies. In fact, we have several companies in our portfolio that are domiciled globally, not in India. But specifically, given that Fast Forward is meant to be fast, we believe that we can accelerate our evaluation and diligence criteria only if you're locally domiciled, ideally already incorporated. Of course, as you know, if you haven't incorporated, it just does delay the process. But from that angle of truly staying fast, we'd like to focus Fast Forward specifically and only Fast Forward to India domiciled companies.
Anjali, one question that has come up is, can solo founders apply? Also, are they given enough preference in terms of against the multiple founder companies for the program?
I think it's a great question again, and we get this question asked very often in terms of how do we look at founding teams, and is there always teams with a plural? Solo founders can definitely apply. Again, at WaterBridge, we do have a history of investing in solo founder companies. So it's not that we have a negative bias towards companies with single founders. It's just that you'll have a lot more answers to give us if you are a solo founder. For example, as I said, it'll be important for us to understand if you have a sufficiently large ESOP pool, beyond the standard 10%, are you willing to keep something larger in order to be able to attract top talent to come and work with you as a solo founder? How are we de-risking being a solo founder company? If you're a solo founder, for example, in tech and product, how do you really see yourself building out the leadership team beyond you as a founder in other domains, in sales, in marketing, in business, in finance, in revenue? So I think these are the questions that we really ask you. So how have you conceptualized the org structure? Do you have early employees as founding team members that you've already identified? How do you see the org structure evolving? And are you completely averse to having a co-founder? Or is it just that you haven't met the right person and really not had that right match? I think some of these questions are important for us to understand. So I would broadly put them in three categories. One is it a question of definitely not wanting a co-founder or just not having met the right person? Are you open in future if you find the right person to elevate them to a position of co-founder? The second point would be around the ESOP pool. Do you have a sufficiently large ESOP pool, and are you willing to share economics in a commercially fair way with people beyond you as a single founder? And thirdly, how can you convince us that if your skill set and domain is in a particular area, how are you building out the org structure to complement areas where you're not strong in as a solo founder?
Anjali, there's one question I believe you briefly touched upon, but just to clarify, would WaterBridge be willing to consider co-investing with angel investors and other micro VCs who are interested in participating in the funding round?
Yes, as long as it meets the criteria of WaterBridge being able to lead. In fact, it's the other way around. If you've already received certain commitments from smaller angels and micro VCs, we encourage you to mention that in the others section, or encourage you to upload that as part of the share cap table and tell us that you have received. It could be firm commitments, it could be soft indicative commitments, but that would actually positively move your application forward. And as long as you feel that there is still space for a lead VC check to come in, we'd be happy to consider.
Anjali, again, you have briefly touched upon, but I have got multiple questions asking for tips and tricks, the most important things while making a complete application to the FastForward. So if you can just briefly highlight those.
Yeah, I think some examples of answers to the most important questions would for me broadly be around the three areas that I spoke about earlier: founders, markets, and business model. I think with founders, we of course ask for your backgrounds, we even ask for references, and we also ask about how as a founding team you met and why are you best positioned to win. I think for us, since we put founders ahead of markets, some of these questions become really important for us to assess how closely do you relate to the problem statement, why are you so passionate about entrepreneurship, what is your opportunity cost as a founder. And also, of course, the big reason we ask for references or we ask for a LinkedIn profile is for us to see whether are there any first, second, third degree connections that we already have to you as a founder and to your network. So the overall founder section for us, I would say, ranks pretty high up in the way in which we evaluate these applications. The second part is around the market. There are questions around how do you size the market? What are the growth rates? How large do you think the market for your chosen sector is? And the reason, again, is for the points I touched upon briefly, which is what are growth rates? What are inflection points? How big do you really think this can get? How have you evaluated competition? I would really put competition up there. More often than not, we do get responses saying that there is no direct competitor to the business model that I've thought of. But obviously, we all know that as an idea stage or seed stage company, given that most of the larger scale competition won't know of your existence, that you may feel like there is no direct competition. We always encourage founders to look at competition from three dimensions. One is assume the vision for your product builds out at size and scale, and assuming that you're wildly successful, which is what we all like to assume and believe. Who do you think your competition would be directly, right, at scale? Secondly, assume your competitor is dumped with lots of capital. And if capital is dumped upon anybody in your similar ecosystem, do you believe that capital will enable them to enter your space, right? And enter, so is anybody in the adjacencies of the business model that you're currently building in? And what would it take for somebody in an adjacent space to enter your space? Simply put, what are the moats to entry for your space? And will capital solve for that from a competitor? I think in today's market, it is important to ask that question. And if somebody else is dumped with capital, can they build what you're building? And the third thing is timing. I think it's really important, again, to understand how companies evolve and progress and scale. How do you see yourself moving with time? Do you move upstream? Do you move downstream? Will you consolidate horizontally? I think it's really important to know what market position you're taking, and with time and then scale and then therefore capital, where do you see yourself evolving as a business? And at each of these inflection points, how does your competitive landscape change? So really encourage you not to look at competition from a here, now, today perspective, but from a tomorrow and beyond perspective, using these three milestones.
Yeah, Anjali. There's one more question relating to the stage of the business. Is an MVP and readiness for launch a criteria for application?
I think MVPs definitely help. Readiness has to be a yes. If you're still whiteboarding, then I would not encourage you to apply for fast forward. While we say idea stage, what we mean is that there's a very clear vision, a very clear charter and roadmap that you've already laid out for the company, and it's only capital that is preventing you from building out the product or hiring your first few employees. But clearly, if you're in the drawing board or the whiteboard or the blueprint stage, then fast forward is maybe not the right program for you. $1 million is also a lot of money to be taking in for a company that is pre-MVP, I would say. But if not an MVP, we would definitely expect not I would say like a working prototype or early pilots in your journey, but definitely some version of an MVP, but definitely a very clear blueprint of the vision for your company.
Yeah. So, Anjali, in the interest of time, I will take one or maybe a couple of more questions. So, but there's one more question relating to they're a seed stage company looking to raise more than $1 million. So, whether they can apply for fast forward, and if not, how can they reach us or the WaterBridge team?
Yeah, good question, and thanks for asking that. Fast forward, as you know, we cap the upper limit is $1 million from WaterBridge specifically for fast forward. Having said that, as you know that we don't only do fast forward at WaterBridge. Fast forward is a dedicated seed program. If you're looking to raise more than $1 million, I would encourage you to directly email one of us. All our email IDs are on the WaterBridge website. Many of us are part of the call today. Each of us have very active LinkedIn profiles and put out our sector preferences publicly. I would encourage you to look up each of the team profile on the WaterBridge website and write to one of us directly if you're looking to raise more than $1 million. And we would certainly consider it as part of the separate and different decision-making cycle at the fund.
Thank you, Anjali. In the paucity of time, we have tried to answer as many questions as we can. You can always reach out to us, any of us from the team member, or write to us at fastforward at waterbridge.vc. We'll be happy to interact with you if in case your question was not taken. We have tried to answer as many questions as we can from this session. Like Anjali said in beginning, we will also be conducting many more such AMAs over the course of next 2 months. So in case if someone could not participate or someone has any more questions, they can join and ask their questions then. I would like to leave it up to Anjali to give her closing remarks. Thank you so much for joining today's session.
No, thank you so much, Nihar. I think we had promised everyone that we'll keep time. Sincere thanks for everyone once again for taking the time out. As I mentioned earlier, this is just the first of many AMAs that we've designed and scheduled for the rest of the fast forward season. If you have any pressing urgent queries, feel free to write directly to fastforward@waterbridge.vc. Reach out to any one of the investment team members that are part of today's call, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. The fast forward application window is a rolling one this year, and we continue to seek out applications throughout the next couple of months. And therefore, if you're a founder, I sincerely hope that we've convinced you to apply. And I hope that this knowledge session and this knowledge sharing session has been useful. And as I said, positively encouraged you to apply. Feel free to reach out to us and write to us with anything additional. Throughout the course of the next few weeks, Nihar is going to be pushing out content, including snippets of today's session. They've also saved the chat with all the additional questions that we weren't able to answer today. And we'll try our best to answer these via our social channels in the coming weeks. But thank you all once again. Look forward to seeing your application at Fast Forward. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.